Whoa!
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 It's spooky.
Ghostbusters.
Whoa!
Mute. Damn it.
Wait, no, put it back on. Oh! I don't know if this will come up on the mic.
I think
If there's something strange in this neighborhood, it's unsolicited conjecture.
Mute. There we go.
Yeah.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. If you watched our last episode, you will know that we teased the fact that we are going to see the new Ghostbusters Afterlife tonight.
Yes. Hit it. Yes. Welcome back, everybody, to Unsolicited Conjecture with Josh and Jeremy. As Jeremy said, we're going to see Ghostbusters Afterlife. This movie, I don't know. If you think, first off, that we're wearing the same clothes as the last episode, no, we're not. But
We should have just changed shirts.
we could have changed shirts just for that movie magic, but we didn't. We're recording this the same day. This is Wednesday.
No, now we gave everyone crucial information and they'll know when we recorded the last episode.
They already figured it out from the other. We gave them other clues.
You are assuming our audience is very intelligent.
I am. I will not speak down to them.
So it's Wednesday.
It's Wednesday. We are
Going tomorrow, Thursday.
We're going tomorrow. Tomorrow to the Alamo to the 7 o'clock show.
7:15.
Oh, that's even
We
better.
will be there early, though, so we can record some more footage to go along with this.
Yeah, Ghostbusters Afterlife. This is a long time coming. I have dutifully followed the news about Ghostbusters 3 since the 90s, and every iteration of Ghostbusters 3 that was supposed to happen, from the fabled Dan Aykroyd script where the Ghostbusters go to hell was the first one. There was going to be a Ghostbusters 3 with Jonah Hill and Seth Rogen. There was going to be one with Will Ferrell and Paul Rudd. There was going to be all these different versions of Ghostbusters 3.
Will Ferrell and Paul Rudd are in a new Apple show.
They are, and Paul Rudd is in Ghostbusters 3.
Yep.
But
Maybe Will Ferrell will be a ghost.
maybe. But anyway, long time, lots of rumors. Because Dan Aykroyd, anytime anyone ever asks him about Ghostbusters 3, he's like, yeah, it's happening. And he's always excited about it. And then there's a whole new, every time he talks, there's a whole new round of articles written about Ghostbusters 3. It's finally happening. It is finally happening.
You know, you mentioned Dan Aykroyd. I read this article where he said that he never watches himself in the movies that he makes. Like, he never watches the movies that he's in because he doesn't want to see how he performs and he doesn't want to affect his next performance. Huh? I thought that was pretty interesting.
It makes sense. I mean, he's a fairly particular kind of guy.
That he is. I've seen his Crystal Skull Head vodka.
Yeah. But that's interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that. This has been a long time waiting for Ghostbusters 3. I drive a Ghostbusters Jeep every single day.
Yeah, I like Ghostbusters. I've always liked Ghostbusters. Josh is on another level of
My
Ghostbusters
wife and I got
fandom.
married on Halloween 2015, and we took pictures with proton packs and ghost traps in our wedding gear.
Gotta catch them all. Wait, isn't that something else?
That's, yep, I think it's the Japanese Ghostbusters. Ghostimon.
So how come the last Ghostbusters wasn't called Ghostbusters 3? What was it actually called?
Well, it was just called
2016?
Ghostbusters, and then they added a subtitle called Ghostbusters Answer the Call.
Okay.
It's not Ghostbusters 3 because it's not in the continuity. It's a reboot.
Yeah.
So the other movies didn't take place in that universe. So it's not really it's the third Ghostbusters movie.
Yeah.
But the true third Ghostbusters story with the original cast is, I think, the game Ghostbusters, the game. It's called.
But you just said that in the last Ghostbusters movie, they were walking down the hallway and there was a bust of Egon.
Yeah.
So I guess that was just
reference to Harold Ramis.
That was just for the fans and not necessarily.
Yeah, just like you had Ernie Hudson was in there as he owned the funeral parlor at the end.
Oh yeah.
They, and Bill Murray.
forgot about that
of
part,
course,
actually.
they were all in there. Dan Aykroyd was a cab driver, and then
Good old Bill Murray.
Bill Murray had the bigger role as the ghost debunker.
I saw Bill Murray just join the MCU also.
Did he?
Yeah, he like leaked some picture on his Instagram in an outfit.
That's right. It's Ant-Man, right? Ant-Man 3?
I don't know, honestly. I don't remember. I just saw the picture.
I saw something about, I think it was Ant-Man 3, if I remember. I think he might be in Ant-Man 3.
Man, I'm excited about that. I'm a big Bill Murray. Now we just need Bruce Campbell to join the MCU, and everything will be complete. What if Ash got his own MCU character?
Okay, you listen to what you're saying. If the next movie, he's the next movie. Bruce Campbell will be joining the MCU.
Oh, really?
Sam Raimi is directing Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness.
Uh-huh.
Sam Raimi puts Bruce Campbell in every single movie he directs. It's literally just a matter of time. He was in all the other Spider-Man movies.
Happen.
No, he definitely will be. I am more certain of that than I am that Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire will show up in the next Spider-Man. Bruce Campbell will be in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, and it'll probably be fun.
All I'm saying is I like Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool. It's cool, it's fun, it's quirky and different, but just give Bruce Campbell his own hero. He deserves
his own hero. I don't know. I'd have to think about that. I don't know who.
They should just bring Ash in as his own brand new MCU hero. His chainsaw hand. Marvel,
yeah.
Like that could be his shtick. That's his thing. He's chainsaw hand and he can't die or something. Who knows?
Well, it's yeah. Well, I don't know who actually. I guess De Laurentiis has the rights to Army of Darkness. I don't know who has the rights to the Evil Dead movies.
Marvel has all the money. They can just buy it. They can just buy it, just like they did with Spider-Man.
Remember Freddy versus Jason that came out 20 years ago or whatever?
I don't remember the movie, but I do remember it coming out.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But that movie was originally supposed to be Freddy versus Jason versus Ash.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He got cut out of the movie in production.
That's so sad to hear.
You can look it up. There's some stuff out there. Freddy versus Jason versus Ash. Maybe it was all just a rumor. Who knows?
It sounds like some clickbaity stuff right there. I would clickbait on it.
It was a long time ago, but yeah, man, it's good.
I wish they'd bring back the Evil Dead series. I thought it was good.
It was.
I really enjoyed it.
There's a new movie I think coming. They're going to be doing more with the property.
That's great.
I don't think they're doing more. Bruce is doing more. I think he might be done with Ash, at least for now. No.
Sad day. That speaks so much of my entire childhood. But back to Ghostbusters. My prediction for Ghostbusters 3 is that Ghostbusters is about to become the best trilogy of all time. Okay. Those are high claims right there.
Well, also because most trilogies stop being trilogies. The greatest trilogies of all time were Back to the Future, which is still a trilogy.
Yeah.
Indiana Jones, which is no longer a trilogy, but also the fourth one isn't one of the best movies. And then also Star Wars, which is now 3 trilogies.
Yeah, a quintrilogy?
Trilogy.
Trilogy?
Trilogy. Yes.
It's like B batteries. That's why they don't use it. B batteries?
It's trilogy. But yeah, I think Ghostbusters is about to take that role. See,
I would love to believe that, but we all also know how typical it is for them to bring back or reboot something that was very popular a long time ago and bring out the next rendition of it, and it's absolutely horrible. And I'll go ahead and mention Bill and Ted in this example. Like,
you didn't like it?
I didn't, man.
Oh, I
just thought it was. I thought it was. I don't know. I thought it was too. It would be like if they brought like Happy Gilmore back right now.
That doesn't work. Vanessa and I tried to watch Hubie Halloween.
Oh, I tried to watch it.
30 seconds in, and I had to turn it off. I was cringing so hard. I couldn't do it.
And I tried to watch it because I loved Bill and Ted. I love Keanu.
I understand your trepidation with Ghostbusters, but it is not. It is unfounded.
Factual.
Because what we're talking about here is the son of the original director. Ivan Reitman directed Ghostbusters 1 and 2. Jason Reitman was a kid on set when the first Ghostbusters was being made. He is the original Ghostbusters fan. He was a fanboy before anyone else had seen it. Yeah. he is the one true Ghostbusters fan in that sense.
Yeah.
It affected him first and most. And if you look at the type of movies he makes really smart, like heartfelt, like not necessarily self-aware, but he's very aware of his story choices.
No, for sure,
in his movies. And with this, it's going to be about loss. It's going to be about a family coming back together. It's going to be about, finding your destiny in a sense, and by learning about your past. They're like, it's going to be these kids who probably didn't know their grandpa much, because he was kind of crazy, and I'm sure something happened that
or they
kept
knew
them
him
on
at
the
all.
way.
It kind of seems like they didn't know him at all.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a really, really solid entry. I don't know if you saw, who was it? Hugh Jackman was just all over.
I did see that, actually.
Yeah, his Twitter, telling everybody this movie pays off in every way possible.
But I think it'll be a great movie, but when you look at the three set up together as a trilogy, how much different the first two are going to be compared to the third one?
I don't know.
We'll see. I'm just saying.
I think they're going to be...
the first two, it doesn't have that same heartfelt progression of story feeling to it. You know what I mean?
It's going to get real.
Yeah.
It's going to get real with this one. And I think that's good. I think it's...
I'm not saying it's a bad thing at all. I'm just saying when you look at the three together as said quote unquote trilogy.
Well, sure. It's not going to be the same as Star Wars or Back to the Future, which were designed to be three movies in that sense, and tell a cohesive story. What this is going to do is take an awesome first movie, and I love Ghostbusters 2, but I saw it in the theater when I was 6. So I love Ghostbusters 2.
Well, and to be fair, we're calling it Ghostbusters 3, but they call it Ghostbusters Afterlife.
What?
I said, we're calling it Ghostbusters 3, but isn't the movie actually titled Ghostbusters Afterlife?
Oh, yeah, sure. But it's the third movie in the continuity.
Correct.
So, yeah, Ghostbusters Afterlife. Like I said, the other one was going to be Ghostbusters Go to Hell. Afterlife, I think, is a good title. And I've been waiting for Ghostbusters 3 for so long, and now it's finally happening, and I was really sad when Harold Ramis died, because I knew that they wouldn't ever really be able to do the iconic, like, Ghostbusters 3.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm talking about in particular.
Yeah, it's not going to be not going to be the same, but
it could be better.
And honestly, the thing that we want can't happen. So
yeah, well, and it makes sense since it's such an old movie. They're really trying to gather that older audience that were connected to the first two films. So to make it more of that like heart warmth, like growth story, as you talked about,
it's going to be a real story about probably a very real feeling family who finds out that they're the descendants of Ghostbusters, and when shit goes down, somebody's got to deal with it.
What would you do if all of a sudden you found out you were descendants of actual Ghostbusters?
Well, I mean, I'd feel vindicated in most of my life choices. What do you mean? I would bust ghosts. That's what I would do. I would absolutely bust ghosts. But yeah, so we don't need to talk too much about it, but Ghostbusters Afterlife, big time movie.
We're excited to see it.
We're very excited to see it, and we're going to let you know our thoughts in the future, but that's not our problem. That's future us's problem.
That's accurate. We like to pawn stuff off on them.
Yeah, they have to do all the editing. They have a lot of work to do. Wait, hold on. Okay, I'm getting something. It seems we're ready. Future Josh, and future Jeremy, can you hear us? Are you there? All right, well, take it away. So as you can see, this is not the Alamo Drafthouse. We did not stay and record after we watched the movie, because frankly, the movie was a little much.
It got a little intense.
It was neither of us were in a good headspace in order to really talk about it.
No, for sure. I mean, we sat around and debated it for a little while outside of the theater, but nothing worth
record. Yeah, it wouldn't have been coherent. It wouldn't have been good. But
that's why we're here now.
In the words of the poet Robert Brown, too hot to handle, too cold to hold. We call the Ghostbusters and they're in control. Had 'em throwing a party for a bunch of children, when all the while the slime was under the building. That's Bobby Brown. That's from Ghostbusters 2. But Ghostbusters Afterlife, is it too hot to handle or too cold to hold?
Is it both of those things? I don't know. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it thoroughly. Ghostbusters 3, maybe not, but
I also enjoyed it thoroughly.
Pleasant Ghostbusters movie for sure.
Yes, I loved it. I thought it was wonderful. I thought it was absolutely wonderful. I loved all the choices they made, but I love the story of the making of this movie almost as much. To me, it's just as important as the movie itself.
No, I feel you. We talked about that earlier in the episode. So
all this and more tonight on Unsolicited Conjecture.
We're back after some technical difficulties.
Yeah, ghosts trying to stop us.
Understandably, we were about to talk about them. I don't know where I was going with that.
Not them, but Ghostbusters Afterlife in theaters now. Jeremy, what were you expecting going into this movie?
I think I was expecting exactly what they delivered on, honestly. Like, everything I'd seen up to point was talking about how emotional and it would like tie at the heartstrings a little bit. And I think it gave you a little bit of everything. They didn't go above board with the graphics. Like, it wasn't hardcore graphically induced, and that's something that I enjoyed.
There was only 2 ghosts, really, right?
Yeah,
we didn't see many. Well, there was a few. There was a little montage.
Well,
but
and
we
when
didn't
they're
see as
playing
many
with the
ghost
blasters
busting.
and everything, you know, there was graphics there. But generally speaking, like, wherever they could, they went with real life style animation on scene.
Yeah, and lots of practical
or animatronics,
effects.
Practical effects. There's the word I was looking for.
Yeah, the Gozer the Gozer Temple. By the way,
yeah,
spoilers for Ghostbusters Afterlife for this whole thing.
Yeah, we are basically spoiling everything.
Yeah,
if you haven't
we're going
watched
to discuss it.
Yeah, if you haven't watched it, then go watch it before seeing this. And if you just want to hear people talk how amazing this movie is, then continue listening.
Go watch it.
Yeah, if you want more shade and hate, there's plenty of that going around for no reason.
Yeah, we'll get to that. We're going to talk about the critical response to this movie as well as we go. But as you alluded to earlier, I really had to do some research and get some things straight in my head to be able to properly review this movie, because for myself, and I know for as well as you, we've been waiting for this movie for like 30 years. I've been a diehard Ghostbusters fan since I was a kid. My first memory is seeing Ghostbusters 2 in the theaters. Not my first memory, but my first movie memory. I would have been 6. We're you know, the ones who drank the Ecto Cooler.
Sure.
We have been the keepers of the Ghostbusters flame for this 3 decades. That movies have not been happening, and we've been teased by Dan Aykroyd and Bill Murray talking about it happening and not happening, and different people they're casting and not casting. Ghostbusters 3 itself has become this palimpsest of rumors and false starts and development hell. It's almost interesting that one of the first concepts that Dan Aykroyd pitched was this Ghostbusters Hellbent, where the Ghostbusters go to hell because the movie stayed in production hell for 3 decades. But the movie we got, this Ghostbusters Afterlife, it's a movie about families. You know,
for sure. I think it was very
family.
time appropriate too.
And even beyond just the Spangler family that the movie deals with, there's the Reitman family, there's the Ramis family, there's the Ghostbusters family, the Ghostbusters themselves, their relationships. And then there's the ghost heads, the Ghostbusters fans for all these years. All of these families that were strained or fractured. The one that was least strained, of course, being the Reitmans. But Jason Reitman, who is an Academy Award nominated director for Up in the Air and for Juno, this guy makes good movies.
Yeah.
And he has said over and over and over again in his life that he will never make a Ghostbusters movie. That was his dad's thing. And when your dad is Ivan Reitman, it must be difficult to like separate yourself from all of that, you know?
For sure.
So to see that guy like really refuse the call for all of those years.
It's understandable. Their styles were so different.
And they are. But then he had an idea that he knew was going to work.
Yeah.
And then reading like Violet Ramis Steele's book, the Ghostbusters daughter and her relationship with her dad. And after Harold died, here's the thing. After Harold died, Ghostbusters 3 could not happen.
Yeah.
You can't
correct.
do Ghostbusters 3 without Egon. And you can't write a Ghostbusters movie, really, without Harold Ramis.
And you definitely can't replace him.
No, he wrote the first 2 movies. And he wrote them, obviously, with Dan Aykroyd.
Yeah.
But what do we know about Dan Aykroyd's writing? It is not exactly relatable. It was the very first script for Ghostbusters is like a 200-page treatment that takes it's in more different universes than like Avengers Endgame. It is all over the place. It takes place in the future. They're in space.
Well,
The Ghostbusters, it's incredibly dense and like unapproachable. Harold Ramis, he took those ideas from Dan Aykroyd and made them into the really relatable, likable movie that everyone relates to and likes. Like,
yeah, he took his cluster of ideas and refined it into something that anyone could enjoy and relate to.
Absolutely. So what we're seeing is that, Egon, the probably least approachable Ghostbuster, he was really like the heart of that whole franchise because of the way he was able to, make these, and it's not just Ghostbusters. I mean, you look at Harold Ramis's list of like credits, and he's written and directed some of the greatest movies like of a generation. So when you're talking, I mean, the Ghostbusters and Caddyshack and National Lampoon's Vacation, like these movies, and
he defined that shtick genre of movie that was so popular
and
for
Groundhog
those 10
Day.
years.
Groundhog Day is a genre now.
Yeah.
And it's all because of the movie that he wrote. It's its own genre. You can't make a Ghostbusters 3 without Harold Ramis. And Ghostbusters 3 has been a thing in the minds of fans for 3 decades. It is a class 5 non-human, free-floating, repeating phantasm this whole time. To compete with that sort of like lead up, you'd think that you're just going to be shooting yourself in the foot no matter what kind of movie you make when you have all of that. This is a list of individuals who over the past 30 years have been associated or rumored to be part of Ghostbusters 3. Chris Farley, Will Smith, Chris Rock, Ben Stiller, Owen Wilson, Jack Black, Michael Cera, Alyssa Milano, Eliza Dushku, Matthew Gray Gubler, Kristen Bell, Jonah Hill. I'm doing like the SNL voice. Kristen Bell, Jonah Hill, Sarah Paxton, Emma Stone, Kristen Wiig, Linda Cardellini, Melissa McCarthy, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Jason Statham, Bill Hader, Anna Faris, Will Forte, Steve Carell, Adam Pally, Charlie Day, Jesse Eisenberg, Brie Larson, Anne Hathaway, Zach Galifianakis, Rebel Wilson, Aubrey Plaza, Aziz Ansari, Channing Tatum, and Chris Pratt. That's a lot. That's 34 people.
And for those of you who have seen our previous episodes, anyone pay attention to that last name he said.
Oh, yeah.
Chris
he was
Pratt.
almost a Ghostbuster.
Yeah,
he was almost a Ghostbuster.
He's everywhere. He's everything.
With Channing Tatum. They were going to be part of the Paul Feig reboot universe. There are going to be other Ghostbusters in that same universe. Didn't happen. Not something we got. But what we did get was a very small, intimate movie about the Spangler family and really about a broken family and restoring that, it was beautiful. The whole thing was beautiful. It was touching. It was a great movie.
One of the things I actually really enjoyed about it is that, like, realistically, even if you are someone who was younger today and had never seen any Ghostbusters movie before, you didn't need any backstory. Like, there was no knowledge that you needed before sitting down in the seat to enjoy that movie as a whole.
Yeah. And what's a story that takes place? It's not from the Ghostbusters perspective.
It's a story about a family, and there happens to be ghost busting in it, less than it's a story about Ghostbusters.
Sure. Yeah.
Like,
no,
it's
I
more
agree
like
with
the
that.
franchise line running through. And that's totally cool because, once again, they advertised it as such. They were never like, this is going to be Ghostbusters 2. Look at this slapstick comedy that we're throwing in the trailer. Yeah. They were always like, from day one, the trailer was hardcore. This is going to be an emotional ride. And it's obviously going to be about this young child.
Yeah. Yeah. And by the way, McKenna Grace, who plays
Amazing.
Phoebe, she carried that movie. She
really did. Podcast. Me and my wife talked about him right after the movie. We thought he was a great cast in there. He was funny. Like, he was good comic relief.
He was awesome.
But she was amazing, for sure.
Absolutely carried that film, and she channeled Egon in very surprising ways sometimes.
Yeah.
Like,
just her first introduction was enough.
Yeah, it was great. And it really told the story of a family that was, you know, on the edge, much like the Ghostbusters were at the beginning of the first movie. There's a lot of parallels. I wasn't necessarily expecting this movie to parallel the original in such sort of a stringent format. Like,
I love them watching the commercials. I love that part of it in particular.
Yeah, no, that was really cool, doing the research and finding out about the Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
So let's go through a couple of the things that the people have kind of some maybe questions about the movie. Number one is the very beginning of the movie. We see the death of Egon Spangler, and this was like a really, really good, well shot scene. I mean, his face
I talked
was
about it
obscured.
so much right after we watched it. I love it. There was this whole buildup of anonymity throughout the whole thing. Like, you knew exactly who it was without ever seeing who it was. Like, especially that scene where he kind of slowly steps back behind the pillar as he's about to throw the switch. Like, that was my favorite, like, shot of that whole sequence, because I thought they pulled it off very well, very classy.
Yeah, and it had almost a very like Spielberg-y kind of feel to
exactly.
it, you know, which a lot of the movie does, to be fair, because there's some E.T., there's some Goonies. This film shares some DNA with those kid adventures, because it turns Ghostbusters into a kid adventure.
Yeah, well, that's what the movie really is,
a
kid adventure. It's all about the granddaughter.
Yeah, absolutely. So we see Egon die, and one thing that's come up that some people have been, you know, arguing about, we see in one of the trailers the PKE meter and the little antennas flipping up, and it turns into like a PKE taser.
Yep.
With the little, you know, proton beam.
Yeah, I thought that was strange because I'd never seen that before.
I didn't really catch it on the first watch through, because obviously Egon has a plan. Egon is trying to stop something, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work, and we all know that Egon's going to have a backup plan. But what it looks like, especially on the second viewing, and once I heard people talking about it, it kind of seems like maybe Egon actually sacrifices himself, because we know that when the terror dogs like possess someone, it controls them and controls their actions. So in order to stop himself from being possessed, he may have actually shocked himself to stop his heart, as opposed to just have a heart attack like they said. But that also makes sense, because maybe he knew that would ensure him becoming a ghost, so he could continue to help out. What'd you get with
three
that?
steps forward kind of stuff. You know, I didn't read that deeply into that scene, honestly. I was just as we just mentioned, I was amazed by the scenes leading up to that scene so much, and then I noticed it happen, but I thought it was like that. I didn't understand what was going on, because
it's real quick.
I thought, well, you know, I thought he was about to be possessed by it, because that's the typical rhetoric that goes along with it. And then he just died and it hits the floor. So I'm like, did the ghost just kill him? Because I haven't really seen ghosts do that yet. Like, that's not their jam.
Yeah, we haven't seen much like ghost murder.
Yeah, exactly. So I was confused by it, but I was still just thinking about the scenes before that, honestly, that I didn't have enough time to wrap my head around it.
Well,
and since you've seen it twice.
I don't hold that against you at all, because on your first watch through of this movie, it was such a crazy, like, emotional
for
ride.
sure.
Like, it started to feel like I wasn't keeping up necessarily with every single thing that was happening, because I was enjoying so much. I mean, we know that obviously Egon left the other Ghostbusters because either they didn't believe him about what he thought was happening.
That's what it seemed like to me. Like, he was trying to tell everyone that this.
So he sacrificed that. He left them behind. He left his family behind. There's a lot of self-sacrifice in that in order to do this. So if he did kill himself, that's just more sacrifice. It's the same thing. You know, I don't think it necessarily changes anything. I think it's the only thing that makes sense.
Well, it's a dark idea, and I don't think that such a dark idea fits into Ghostbusters 1 or 2, but this movie is something different. Like, I don't want to classify it as Ghostbusters 3 because I don't feel like that's what it is. It's very different. Like I said, it's more of an emotional movie than it is a comedy by any means. Like, there is comedy in it, but
it's very genuine.
Yeah,
though,
exactly. It's very different than the first two.
Yeah.
But like I said, I feel like that dark theory could fit in really well in this universe because there are plenty of dark things going on here that wouldn't have happened in the initial two.
Sure. Well, Ghostbusters has always dealt with some dark stuff too. Like, Gozer is very much like a Lovecraftian kind of nightmare.
Yeah.
You know, you have your cult of worshipers, you have your Evo Shandor, and you know, there's a lot of Lovecraftian elements. But they always did it in this
kind of comical way.
Sure. Well, it's introducing those type of like high concept horror with modern 80s comedy sensibilities. So it's merging those two universes and seeing what happens when, you know, funny people have to deal with this in much the same way as like Abbott and Costello meet Dracula. Like that was, or meet Frankenstein. That was the, you know,
Army of Darkness.
Well, yeah, that's later, obviously. But yeah, and so that Ghostbusters is inspired by those movies. Yeah. You know, horror comedy. So to do a big budget horror comedy with amazing special effects, and it feels like right now we're getting into like what makes the original Ghostbusters really good.
But that's okay.
Yeah, and there's so many things, and anybody could talk for hours about the original Ghostbusters, and everybody describes it as lightning in a bottle, and it was, you know, the perfect movie at the perfect time with the perfect cast and the perfect execution and the right people working special effects, and everything just worked perfectly with this movie. And, you know, I saw an interview with Bill Murray the other day where he was saying, like, at one point during the filming, he saw some dailies and he saw like some of the previs, like special effects, and he realized like, oh wow, this is going to be huge. He knew it was going to be huge right then. There's something really magical about that they could know that they were just making an iconic film.
Yeah.
But there's so much in it from the score, the original Elmer Bernstein score, to the soundtrack, and some of these like iconic Ghostbusters songs that you don't really get any of. Well, you get some, but you don't get that same sort of soundtrack feeling.
But the soundtrack was amazing.
Sure.
I love the soundtrack. But once again, like we discussed it right after, I was like, I cannot believe the first time the lights came on the car that the theme song didn't come on with. I was expecting it and they just didn't drop. And I was like, that's either a smart move or it just pissed me off a lot.
Yeah. They saved the theme for the end. They really just, you got to hang out in that Elmer Bernstein kind of world the whole time.
Yeah.
Because so much, and the music was so well done because obviously Elmer Bernstein wrote an incredible score for the first movie, and the way that they adapted it and played with it, and the whole thing was familiar yet still unique and really well done.
The introduction of just the girlfriend character, Lucky, was that her name? Lucky?
Yeah.
There we go, man. That scene right there. That's again, they were using that. He's real good at this, showing other characters or showing things and still remaining everything anonymous. Like the way the cowboy was blocked off by the steering wheel and the hat, but he was looking at her and she was looking at the camera. Like everything was just directed at her in a very nondescript way. Like, you know what I mean? Everything was pointing her direction without it being obvious. Like all these nuanced factors that went into just this one beautiful shot.
Oh yeah.
It's like the cinematography was really well done.
It was.
And it smokes the cinematography in the other Ghostbusters films,
of course.
Obviously.
Definitely. Absolutely. But I don't think Ivan Reitman would have a problem with that either. No. You know, it's a different style of movie.
To be fair, the only gripe I really have with the whole movie is that, you know, I kind of feel like the brother and the girlfriend Lucky, they were kind of like throwaway characters. I feel like there wasn't much development there. Like,
well, and I think when you look at a movie like this, you know that Sony probably wanted to keep it right around 2 hours. Yeah. I don't think they wanted a 2.5 or 3 hour Ghostbusters movie.
For sure. They didn't want what we wanted.
What this movie is really an exercise in keeping only what's essential.
Yeah.
And not wasting time on things that aren't really essential. Because think about, like, there's been a lot of people talking about, like, oh, Ghostbusters 2 must not be canon because the car didn't have the Ecto 1A, you know, ghost with the 2 fingers up. And that, like, and I mean, people have asked Jason Reitman about that. And he's like, yeah, there was an idea about that. We didn't use it in this film. but it doesn't matter for the story.
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't matter.
Like this is deep fan theory.
Sure. And who was Carrie Coon's mom? Who had a kid with Egon? And also, if you look at the timeline, I'm pretty sure that Egon had a family and a daughter during Ghostbusters 2. We just didn't know anything about it.
Yeah, they never talk about it.
Yeah.
Their Bill Murray is the only personal life delved into.
Exactly.
For the whole time.
And that makes sense because he is, like, as Dan Aykroyd said, the greatest, like, comedian or comedic frontman for a movie.
For sure.
Like,
Anyone will go see anything with Bill Murray in it.
Leading man, rather. So, yeah, he's an incredible talent, obviously. You have so much talent just in this one movie. You have all these, like, iconic, like, comedy legends coming together to make something that just completely, you know, caught everybody off guard. And it spun off into 140 episodes of, you know, a cartoon show, The Real Ghostbusters, which is a great show. Though most of those episodes were, like, story edited by J. Michael Straczynski, who's a very famous modern-day comic book author, who wrote some of the coolest stuff in, like, Thor, and comic book fans, you know more than me about what J. Michael Straczynski has done, but he's written some really good stuff. So you go from that, and then to Ghostbusters 2, where you have all the same people coming back together, but a much bigger budget, a lot more, you know, effects driven, and, like, as Bill Murray has said, like, they didn't have as much freedom to play because the effects controlled so much. The movie comes out in 89, and then, like, 2 weeks later, Tim Burton's Batman came out. Ghostbusters 2 was competing with Batman in the theaters. That's difficult for anybody
for sure
to compete with. It underperformed. No more Ghostbusters franchise from that point. And obviously there were some hurt feelings and some frustrations on Bill Murray's side. There's a lot, you know, there's a whole 30 years worth of rumors and conversations. And you can go through some of these concepts are crazy.
Well, this is some of the problem with all this, like, fan theory, and when it takes so long for a franchise to reopen its doors, it's like, no matter what happens, someone is going to be upset about the way it turned out because their theory led in a different way.
Because it's personal. Because just like with any art form, just like with books or with painting, so, you know, so much of the interpretation is done internally.
For sure.
So much of even obviously with movies, they give you visuals, whereas a book, you have to create it in your head. So much of it is personal, and so many people have such a personal relationship with this franchise that how could you not? But also, I mean, why is that? It was the Reagan years, so, like, it was like they were making 30-minute toy commercials and calling them Saturday morning cartoon shows. We were being marketed to. There was a massive marketing campaign for Ghostbusters. It has an incredibly iconic logo. It has one of the best theme songs of all time that is arguably more famous than the movie. Great toys. Fun subject matter. And like I said, a huge marketing campaign with some really famous, like, popular actors. So there's a lot going for it, for Ghostbusters, and for brainwashing all of us into loving it as much as we do.
That's an accurate description of what they did. They totally brainwashed.
But I'm fine with it. I recognize it, and I still stand by my love of Ghostbusters. I'm okay with having been brainwashed as a child. It didn't cost me. I mean, it's definitely cost me money.
Yeah, lots of money.
Yeah.
The attachment to material possessions.
Yes.
That's the part I'm not happy about. The Ghostbusters I'm cool with.
Starting all the way back in 1994. We're talking Dan Aykroyd talking to WWOR Channel 9 News out of Secaucus, New Jersey, and he had an idea for a new movie. He just had to get the team back together. And then 95, 96, 98, this is not even a comprehensive list, but I have put together all this history of the Ghostbusters 3 that never was. And there's rumors all over the place for all different directors and writers, and Sony was hiring writers, and they wrote so many scripts that never went anywhere. There was one by Lee Eisenberg and Gene Stupnitsky, the writers from The Office. They did a take. There was the guy who did Mission Impossible 5 wrote a script. There's all these scripts they're paying for. None of them ever went anywhere. And sometimes, you know, public fights between Aykroyd and Sony, and sometimes, you know, Dan is saying one thing and then they ask Bill Murray about it and he shoots it all down. It's a really tumultuous history for this movie and a lot of buildup. And then 2009, the video game came out and they got all the main actors back. That's a really fun game and it's a cool story. Also has to do with Gozer, the return of Gozer and Ivo Shandor. So it's obviously, it doesn't work with the movie canon.
Yeah.
The game's not canon. It's still fun to play. It's still a fun game. Because, I mean, the Extreme Ghostbusters isn't canon either now. Well, apparently Egon was not, you know, he didn't have a ponytail and was training a new group of Ghostbusters in the 90s. That didn't happen in this universe. But the thing about Ghostbusters is it's been multidimensional since the very first movie. So there are different universes of Ghostbusters.
Why is everyone so obsessed with canon ideas? This is all fictional. Like everyone knows it is fiction. So what's it matter if it's canon when canon is just made up?
I think because that's what separates it from just pure fiction and makes it part of like a universe. Because people want to have this universe that they feel like they can inhabit and live in. To an extent, you know?
Yeah.
So knowing what the rules are, I understand to an extent because obviously this is a big thing in Star Wars too.
No, I know it's in all popular fandoms. Everyone talks about canon and I'm a part of a lot of fandoms. I love science fiction and anything creative and out of the mind, but I'm not so obsessed with this idea of canon.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not obsessed with the idea of, oh, it has to be this way or nothing before and nothing after. Like, especially when it comes to small, what I'm going to call insignificant details, just as he's not holding up the two fingers. Like that is the most insignificant piece of information to obsess over.
Sure. No, of course. I really think it's just because the more, you know, of an affinity you feel towards a property, you want to, it feels more real and more realistic if there is like an established history. So I think people want to know they want to be able to be right. About those things. And that's what a lot of it is.
That's what it sounds like to me also.
But with something like Ghostbusters, canon, I don't think canon is necessarily as important even as it is with Star Wars. But you see what's happening in Star Wars, half of the stuff that comes at the games and the books, they're never canon.
Yeah, that's my point. It's like, so all these things, they can still be great things on their own. Like, don't get me wrong, the ability to have a timeline to look back at and storyline that you feel you can be a part of is cool. And I understand that aspect of it. But like, I just feel like it doesn't have to be that serious.
No.
Like there's a world you're trying to go to and inhabit outside of your own. So like, it doesn't have to be that serious.
Well, it's also a world though that has its own like intrinsic logic and rules. How do ghosts work? Like these are the kind of things that you want to know to be able to, like I said, fully like inhabit that world. So yeah, history and how these things go, like this movie, not to mention what's coming next. We don't know. A lot of these questions could be answered in future things, but this movie, I'll just say it now. We're going to skip to this part. Ghostbusters Afterlife is not Ghostbusters 3.
That was going to be my next question for you. If you thought it was Ghostbusters 3.
I don't think it's Ghostbusters 3, but I do think with this movie, Jason Reitman has busted the ghost that is Ghostbusters 3.
Because it's never happening.
In a meta ghost busting, he busted the ghost that Ghostbusters 3 has been and has loomed over the franchise for 3 decades. And like I said, you can't make Ghostbusters without Harold Ramis. This movie had to. This is not just a Ghostbusters 3 movie. This is like it's a memorial service.
Yeah, for sure.
Both Harold Ramis and for Egon Spangler. 2 essential parts of both the in-universe and production. Because he wrote the movies.
But I do feel like there was, just on a personal level, I feel like there was a little too much Ghost Egon at the end.
Oh, well, yeah. That's another thing we'll have to talk about that. I mean, obviously we've seen characters be resurrected in other movies.
Yep.
Now we've seen Carrie Fisher, and we saw Grand Moff Tarkin. Star Wars does it a lot, apparently. They love bringing people back to life. We saw, the Fast and the Furious, they did one where they brought what's his name back?
Paul Walker? Really?
Jeremy Fast. What was his name?
Paul Walker. Wasn't that his name? Is that his
Kevin
name?
Furious. Yeah, Paul Walker.
It's all family here.
I don't know the
Get out
Fast
of
and
here,
the
fam.
Furious movies that well.
I couldn't tell.
I personally, yes, I was not expecting to see Ghost Egon. I was expecting to see the influence of Ghost Egon like we did for 90% of the movie.
That was incredible. I love the way they handled that.
At the end, when Phoebe is pointing the proton thrower at Gozer and firing, and you see the hand, the blue hand.
That's all I thought we were
steady
gonna
her
get.
hand. Oh, and then to see, like, one of my favorite parts then is then when she's standing next to the 3 original Ghostbusters, and Winston does a double take and looks over, and then like
guys.
Peter, who those reactions, like, the original guys were not on screen for very long, but the amount, it was so incredibly effective.
Dude, and Winston looks fresh.
He
looks so good, man.
He
At
does.
the end in particular, the extra scene.
Yeah.
Oh man, he's spiffy.
Absolutely. Well, and that's really nice because it lends to the thinking that, well, he looks like he's going to be the future of Ghostbusters.
Yeah. He's gonna be the Charlie.
Yeah, he can
and have his ghost busting angels.
Sure.
For lack of a better term.
Or maybe Ghostbusters Academy.
No, that could be cool.
You know, there's a Ghostbusters Incorporated for sure. You know, start hitting different cities. So there's so much potential for where it can go.
Yeah,
but
they definitely left it open.
Back to Ghost Egon real quick. I was very surprised that they did it. I was incredibly happy with how good it looked.
I was happy with how good it looked. I just thought it was too much of it. Too much of a good thing is bad.
He was there for a little while.
Yeah, it was like a whole, like, it was like 8-10 minutes maybe of him at the end.
He was there.
I think it should have been a little less. That's all I'm saying. It would have played better if it was a little less.
I thought, like I said, I was happy with how it played personally. Like, it's one of those things where I can't give too many notes on it, because.
But once again, like, we're talking about the most nitpickiest of things.
Absolutely. But the thing I really liked about it, because obviously there's people who think that you shouldn't be resurrecting any actors, you know, to participate in movies once they die. But the thing about
still listen to musicians' music after they die.
No, sure. And you don't necessarily want, but they don't make new music.
Tupac did.
Well, maybe he's not really dead.
You remember that after he died and Mom released that stuff? Yeah.
Well,
there we go.
There you go. Yeah, exactly.
He's living on the island with Elvis still. Yeah, Elvis is still alive.
With JFK Jr.
Obviously.
He's coming back with QAnon.
Somebody's got to be president.
I was really happy with the fact that they didn't make Ghost Egon look like Harold Ramis when he died.
Yeah, no.
And this is something also I read an interview where they talked to Violet Ramis Steele, his daughter, and she said that she was involved at every single phase of development of the Ghost Egon and what he would look like, and the fact that they made him like skinny and they gave him the like sort of shaggier beard, and she said that Harold would have loved that.
Yeah.
Because she described him as being more like a Santa Claus figure when he died.
Who doesn't want to be slimmed up in the camera?
Yeah. But the fact that they made it Egon and they made it the character and it was Harold looking his best.
Yeah, when realistically they could have made what he actually looked like.
And they didn't try to use any footage of his face or anything like that. Like, they did such a tasteful job.
They also didn't use his voice, which I did appreciate. No voice, even though other ghosts make noise.
Yeah.
He didn't make any noise. Though, I did think it was weird. Like, maybe he's a spirit and not a ghost, because when all the traps open up, he doesn't get sucked into a trap.
I think it was just because he was on the right side of the proton beams. I think maybe there's some magnetic thing. I did wonder that. Like, is he going to get pulled in?
Well, maybe he was a spirit and not a ghost. Maybe there's different things.
We don't have to make Egon sacrifice himself twice in one movie. No.
It would have been better though.
He got to say goodbye to his daughter and his granddaughter and everything.
That was the only thing I didn't find. Well, actually, I lied. There was one other scene that I didn't find very cohesive with the rest of the movie, and it was whenever they're leaving the jail and the sheriff says something to Phoebe, and she
grabbed the proton wand.
like she's gonna shoot him, and I was just
Yeah.
like, this is so out of character, because just right before that she got done talking to podcast about how in situations like that she actually gets more calm.
Yeah. Well, it shows that, she's not as in control maybe as Egon.
Yeah,
had
like I said,
been.
I thought it was very out of place.
It was
I
an
thought.
emotional outburst, which you don't see much of from her in that movie. Yeah, it's an interesting little section.
But I also thought it was a weird emotional outburst, like that'd be the same as like her taking the sheriff's gun and pointing it at
very
him.
much so.
But,
Yeah.
like,
Well, the
that's-
sheriff did he draw his weapon or just put his hand on it?
I think he just put his
Yeah.
hand on his weapon.
I mean, yeah, no, it is. It's pointing a weapon
yeah,
at
that's
a
what I'm
person.
saying. It's extreme.
But also, the guy was calling her a liar and taking away. Like, she knew how important this was, and she doesn't seem like necessarily the type of person who's great at like taking no for an answer from people in authority who know less than her.
For sure.
You know? So there's still a little bit of that, rebellious aspect to Ghostbusters.
Like I said, that was just the one
follows
scene.
through.
She could have done anything else. Like she could have slammed something on the ground.
She should have hit the trigger.
She could have done
fired.
Yeah, well,
She just killed him right there.
That's my point. Like she could have done anything else, and I would have been behind it as an emotional outburst. I just think that was too far for what they had built her character to be.
Yeah. Well,
Like-
I mean, she was finding herself as a Ghostbuster, and then that was, threatened to
Gunner
be taken
chair.
away.
Her in the gunner chair was pretty gangster, though.
Oh yeah. No. Oh,
But
it's so good.
You know, one thing, actually, her in the gunner chair, now that I'm thinking about this, I feel like they played out the you know how whenever something happens in a movie, they have that initial scene where like, oh, you pull it out for the first time, and then like the slow-mo coming in. Like I feel like they did that shot kind of like 5 times in a row when they were in the gunner scene. I was like, I'm sure they could have filmed this one little aspect a little different. Once again, this is me being the most nitpicky ever.
Yeah.
I just feel like that's an introduction scene to a weapon,
But
not
after-
a continual use.
Well, with one of those times at least was an introduction for Carrie Coon's character, for the mom, after they rescue her.
Yeah.
And they're driving back, and she sees her daughter pull that lever.
No, I
and
like
the
that
car
one.
fly out and fire, and she just says, "Phoebe, you're a," and the word catches in her throat, and she doesn't say Ghostbuster, and Phoebe looks at her and says, "I'm a scientist." And it's so Egon, and it's so like touching. I don't know. And like she's really recognizing her daughter, seeing that in her. I thought that was so cool. I said there's not much that I can really like complain about with the movie. It feels sacred to an extent because it was handled so well, because it's about all of these families, because it's about Jason Reitman, taking on his father's legacy in a sense.
Oh, and his own style, which is more important.
Yeah.
He took something that was his father's,
but I thought it was a great,
his.
it was a great merging of his style and the original.
Exactly.
It paid homage to the original, and sure, there's it's getting a lot of critical backlash. Should we talk a little bit about that? Do the critic stuff right now? Ghostbusters Afterlife it's sitting at 62% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes for the critical analysis.
The fan way higher. Fan analysis.
Fan is at 95%.
Yeah, there we go. That sounds right.
Yeah. So this is another in a long line of like amazing movies that critics have just totally gotten wrong.
Well,
when it came out.
I can't remember the last time I trusted a Rotten Tomatoes score.
Well, Rotten Tomatoes is a bad metric, I think, for really like analyzing film anyway.
Yeah.
Obviously, good is not always determined by democratic means and by, necessarily mass appeal. But in this particular case, there's some things going on. And I read a bunch of negative reviews.
Uh-huh.
People that said they hated the movie and really like kind of virulent, like negative. I didn't understand it.
I
It's
also
really
didn't understand
difficult.
a lot of them. If you saw the trailer, how could you not know what you were getting into?
Yeah. And so the number one critique I've seen from all of these, it just sort of breaks down into 5 topics. They say there's too much nostalgia and too much fan service. So
You're trying to please the people that are here to see this movie way too much. We're going to need you to stop that.
yeah, quit making this a good movie for the people that want it to be.
Yeah.
Who's going to see Ghostbusters Afterlife that didn't like Ghostbusters? Who hasn't seen Ghostbusters? This is a movie that has really stood the test of time. I don't think it's in the Criterion collection just yet, but it's definitely like a cultural touchstone.
For sure. And who's going to see Ghostbusters that doesn't want nostalgia in it? I'm going to see Ghostbusters Afterlife, but I've hated every Ghostbusters before this.
Yeah, why would the production team try to make that person happy? Like, why would they be the target demographic? Obviously, they're not. Too much fan service. I mean, a friend of mine put it really succinctly and said, like, in Avengers Endgame, when Captain America picks up Mjolnir and fights with it, that's fan service.
Yeah.
But the difference between a moment like that, which is just incredibly like triumphant, and when fan service doesn't work, is it's nothing more than just how invested you are in the story.
Yeah.
So if you're not going to be invested in the story,
then the fan service is moot
not
on you.
for you.
Yeah.
So to complain about that, it just feels like, well, you did it wrong. You'd watched it wrong. That's basically what's going on here. This is, if you didn't like Ghostbusters Afterlife, I'm going to show you all the reasons that you're wrong.
Sounds
for
about
doing
right.
so.
That doesn't sound like Josh at all.
Yeah. So, I mean, too much nostalgia. Yes, obviously, there's a lot of nostalgia, but it's a movie from the 80s. And as I said earlier, this is not Ghostbusters 3. This is a memorial service for Harold Ramis and for Egon and for the notion of Ghostbusters 3.
Yeah, for
this
sure.
is putting an end on that whole narrative so that something else can come from it and be born from it.
Yeah, now they can expand the universe a little bit more, go further into things they couldn't because they were restricted to the thought of Ghostbusters 3.
Yeah, and if you just went it and try, I mean, they made, obviously, this is the next point. Ghostbusters 2016, Answer the Call, Backlash.
Oh man,
Double
that was
backlash.
hard.
And obviously there was a lot of bullshit that happened in 2016, and it really made me not, I ruined it for me in a lot of ways, just the way people thought about it. I saw the movie in the theater. I had fun.
I thoroughly enjoyed it also.
It didn't satisfy my itch for Ghostbusters 3.
For sure, but that's not, I don't think, once again, they weren't building it up to be that.
Exactly. They weren't. They were doing a new thing.
It's people putting their own expectations on something, even though it's very clear and obvious that's not what it's going to be.
Sure. And what Paul Feig did in that movie was take 4 SNL comedians and do the same thing.
Yeah.
They made jokes and they tried to make it fun and funny, and obviously it's a slightly different style of humor. This, I think the 2016 movie falls more into the like the Will Ferrell like gag reel style comedy where everybody's making jokes constantly but nobody actually like responds to them.
Yeah.
So any of that sort of Step Brothers-y, Judd Apatow-esque kind of comedy. And that's what was, I don't know if it was still necessarily as popular in 2016 when it happened as like when Bridesmaids came out a couple years before.
For sure.
I think there may have been a little bit of a taste shift.
I think what they did wrong there, in my opinion, really is that, when you watch the original 2 Ghostbusters, it's really like Bill Murray as the comic. Like, he is the comic, and there are other comedians in it, but he's the only one really throwing comedy around.
Well,
the other dudes have this very serious, dry sense of comedy that was missing in the 2016.
They stick to their characters.
Yeah.
They work within the bounds of their character.
Correct.
Egon makes jokes, but they're Egon
Yeah,
jokes.
they're lame, dry science jokes.
Ray
Exactly.
makes jokes too, but they're Ray jokes. So
Exactly.
everybody works inside their own type of character. Whereas in the new one, you got the very first scene where you have the guy from The Office like walking around in the house giving the tour.
Oh, yeah.
And he's making jokes about, it's a secret entrance for Irish people and stuff. There's no reaction from anybody. Like, it's just deadpan. Everybody's making jokes. The boss, when they get fired. Like, yeah, everybody's...
Even the ghost making jokes.
Just about, yeah. So that... The thing, honestly, the thing that bugged me most about Afterlife was that... Or not Afterlife, but 2016 was that when they actually went to the mayor and told the mayor, like, hey, there's ghosts. They're just like, yeah, we know. I mean, that I feel like takes some of the wind out of the sails.
Yeah,
of,
exactly.
Hey, here's these paranormal investigators. But if everybody just already knows ghosts are real, or everybody in charge, it's not quite the same story.
But that's what they did so well in this Ghostbusters, is they kind of went back to that initial character development, for lack of a better term. Like, you go back to the original Ghostbusters and you knew exactly who every character, you knew who Egon was, you know who Venkman was, like who they were personally.
Well, to the point that the Ghostbusters, like the 4 Ghostbusters and the character types, have almost become like a pattern for replication for every movie that comes since. The Ninja Turtles don't really exist without like the 4 Ghostbusters, with Donatello as Egon, and you can really map it out and say that Ray is Leonardo, and I mean you can map out, see which Ghostbuster is which. There's only 2 left, I have to commit at this point. I mean,
so obviously Bill Murray is Michelangelo. He's always cracking jokes. It has to be.
Yeah, but then that leaves Winston as Raphael, I guess. Yeah, that makes sense.
He's the most serious.
He's
kind
the most
of
serious,
like straight to the point.
There you go. Okay, we did it. So there you go.
Easy. Send us your recommendations. Who do you want us to compare to Ghostbusters? We'll do it.
So at one point, Jason Reitman said that this franchise is going to, or this movie is going to give the franchise back to the fans. And a lot of people, it seems like a lot of movie reviewers, kind of took that personally too, as if it meant we're going to give it back to all the sexist, racist people that were screaming about Ghostbusters 2016, as if that's all Ghostbusters fans.
Yeah.
And it's clearly not, obviously. Anybody you look at in the Ghostbusters fan community, most people supported the 2016 movie to an extent. Whether they still feel that way or not, you can have different opinions. And it was a reboot, so it doesn't really affect anything. It doesn't matter. Yeah. But it seems like this movie was getting a lot of negative reviews. And to me, it feels like because these reviewers that really like the 2016 better are comparing that to this and saying like, oh, well, that was better than... It doesn't scan.
Well, just like you said, it's like most of these negative reviews that you're seeing on the movie right now are literally negatively reviewing what everyone there is there to see. Like they're like, we are going to shit all over your idea because we wanted it to be this thing when everyone else is here because we wanted that nostalgia. Everybody was like, oh, they finally showed up when they popped up at the end. Like, no one was like, I can't believe they brought them back. What is this nostalgia crap?
Well, and
I guess actually some people are.
Nostalgia or too much fan service. Stuff like, oh, the terror dogs. And then...
That was the first thing I said when we walked out. I love the fact that they didn't go overboard on the graphics for the terror dog, especially when it picks its head up out of like the chips.
It was practical. That was a practical.
It looked like it was a prop from Ghostbusters 2.
Yeah,
it looked like it was the same prop.
It looked absolutely great.
I loved it.
But so much of that's so in this movie. Spoilers. I'm sure you already know. This
52 minutes into this review. In case you didn't know, there are spoilers.
Okay, so there's a couple others. Now these are things that I've been seeing pop up in negative reviews of Ghostbusters Afterlife, but they're sort of just general to reboots and sequels.
Okay, well I'm sure I can follow along with a lot of these.
A lot of times, what you see is talk of they. Oh, they just had to make another one. This condescension where you're kind of blaming a movie for capitalism.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, they're all products made for money.
Yeah, no one's making movies to not make money from them.
When in a review, you say they, as if Hollywood is this like...
There's always the obligatory they, though, right?
But it feels like this just dirty, like, corporate money. When... That's not what's happening in this movie.
Yeah.
This is Jason Reitman coming around and writing a Ghostbusters movie against his better judgment and almost against his prior will. Like, this is him realizing this is the right thing to do.
And this is him paying service to his own father.
And family friends. Jason Reitman was the first Ghostbusters fan. He was the #1 Ghostbusters fan. He was on set for the first movie. He was a fan of the Ghostbusters before any of us. And we're old time original Ghostbusters fans
For sure.
But he's has the fan cred.
Yeah, he was got there to see it before it was public.
His birthday party was in Ghostbusters 2.
Oh, really?
My dad, the kid who says my dad says you're full of crap. That's Jason Reitman.
That's funny. I never knew that.
Yeah, he is the preeminent Ghostbusters fan. He was there at the right time. He was on set. I don't see how you can. And then Ivan Reitman was involved the whole way, and Dan Aykroyd was involved the whole way. If the original creators are making the thing, it's not they. It's not this corporate they where it's just dirty money. It's them. It's the creators, the people who made the other one. So what they say goes, right? Isn't that kind of the way you have to look at art?
They created it, so why are they wrong? Because
exactly. So it's a family affair, Even the fact that Bill Murray has said so many times over the years, it's not that I will never do another Ghostbusters 3. It just has to be really good.
Yeah.
It has to be a really good script.
But there's going to be no Ghostbusters 3.
No, not really.
It doesn't make sense.
But
there can't be, actually.
But Bill Murray signed on to this because it's a really good script.
Yeah, because it's not Ghostbusters 3. That's why he signed on to it.
I think so too. Yeah. So it was really touching, and it's Jason's concept to address the hole left by Harold's passing. And that's the only way if you don't address that, anything else you do after that's going to just feel sacrilegious.
Yeah.
If it is true that this is our new religion, pop culture is our religion, then that makes Dan Aykroyd the prophet of Ghostbusters 3. But it also means that this had to be addressed before you can go on and do anything else. Because you can't just make more Ghostbusters without Harold Ramis. You just can't do it.
Well, not only, I think the 2016 kind of proved that. The fact that they just popped up, totally different universe, no tie over, no correlation, no
wasn't
back
horrible.
explanation.
It wasn't horrible, but
it was a good movie.
Didn't feel the same.
No, exactly.
Another critical concept that keeps popping up, just the laziness of Hollywood, and there's never any new ideas, and it's always just sequels and reboots.
I can feel that pain,
but also we know that it's bullshit because there are tons of new ideas.
Well, not only that, like to expand on that fact, like you take something like we talked about before, Bill and Ted, like they brought that back, and that was so spot on to what the original was. You know what I mean? It's obviously a reboot and a sequel, but this is not a reboot or a sequel. You know what I mean? This is its own storyline, whether you've seen the other ones or not. And that's what separates it from being a traditional sequel, or like you cannot go see The Matrix 3 or the new Matrix coming out having never seen the original Matrix movies and know what's going on. I can guarantee you that, and I haven't seen it yet. Yeah. And that works over with just about every other time they do this long boot between a reboot. That's what I think. This is what makes me so mad about all these reviews that we see, because I think as a continuation of a saga, it was done really well because it has the ability to stand alone, which most of these other films, the Bill and Ted's New Bogus Adventure or whatever it was called, does not stand alone without the others.
Well, there's a few movies that you could say maybe do, like Creed was one that picked up from the Rocky series, and you get Rocky in it and everything, but it's a new story.
Yep.
Obviously, The Force Awakens, we mentioned that, but also that you can't really compare it. Nothing else has the like behemoth of media attention behind it as far as like a long-awaited sequel.
Yeah,
that Ghostbusters does.
That's my point.
Nothing is this big. Like, what's the longest? Because it was like 38 years or something.
Well, there was one. Remember when the new Bad Boys came out? There was a big. But once again,
that wasn't that long.
But then once again, though, that was also like without the original Bad Boys movie, it doesn't stand alone.
Sure,
anyone who saw this movie without seeing the originals were in the dark about a lot of things.
Yeah, absolutely. But like Blade Runner and Blade Runner 2049, I think those were like 38 years apart.
Yeah.
But there wasn't 3 decades of people clamoring for a new Blade Runner.
Yeah,
that kind of came out of nowhere.
All of a sudden, it was like, hey, guess what? We've got a new Blade Runner for you.
Yeah, and great. I'll take all the new Blade Runners you want.
I want that jacket.
It was, but it's not the same thing as the lead up for Ghostbusters 3.
Correct.
It's just nothing is. So another thing, these critics, I literally read a review that was talking about Ghostbusters Afterlife, and it was opining how all of these sequels just have to get bigger and crazier with every new incarnation. And I was just like, did you watch this movie?
Yeah, that's not what this was at all.
This was the exact opposite of that.
Step back.
This was incredibly brave to have almost none of the original Ghostbusters in for most of the movie.
Very little ghosts. Very
few ghosts, and then totally new people and kids. It really took, like, it felt like the torch. Everybody kept saying the passing of the torch, but it wasn't a torch. It was a flickering candle when they found it.
Yeah.
Ghost busting was all but done. And then you see it kind of build steam and build back up into something that can continue. And by the end, it's amazing. Like I said, when you see the three guys show up at the end, it's pretty triumphant moment. But I don't know how you can watch this movie and then complain about sequels being too big and the bread and circuses escalation of, it's always got to be more and more. This specifically takes it down almost all the way to stalled out. You know?
I agree, man. This is what we were talking about the other day off camera. And it's like, this movie had everything that I am currently missing from most Marvel movies. It was everything I talked about where I was like, I wish Marvel would go back to this ability to, like, I guess we'll bring up Shang-Chi for an example, because it was like going back to a character with no powers, no nothing, and building them up to what you now recognize. And that's what this movie had a lot of. It had a lot of this very relatable home style feel in the very beginning. And then towards the end, it brings in all of these things that you were hoping it would.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it was really well done. But honestly, if you're going to talk about, like, laziness when it comes to sequels and reboots, I mean, prequel. At least they didn't make it a prequel. Could you imagine that? Here's a bunch of guys working in academia who don't know ghosts are real. There's no prequel, really, to do with Ghostbusters. But that's really the laziest you can do, I think, is the prequel. There's too many prequels. You do a sequel long after the fact. I said, the way this was handled, I thought was great. The only other thing that I had as far as critical response was, I saw a lot of people sort of lamenting the fan perspective. Oh, now they always have to put the fans in the movie. Now there's always a guy who's like, the voice of the fans.
I guess they're assuming podcast is the voice of the fan, or is Paul Rudd the voice?
Paul Rudd probably more, because he's a Ghostbusters fanboy.
Yeah, that's true.
He
knew exactly what the trap was.
Yeah, he knew what it was, and he knew all about them, and he called himself a Ghostbusters fan. And yeah, like the Flash TV series, you got what's his name, who becomes Vibe, who's a voice for the fandom, the DC fandom within the show. And sure, there's some of that. You do get some of that. You get to hear Ray talking like, But
isn't that the point of being a fan to something? So you get extra special things that are mentioned your way?
But also, are we going to pretend like Winston wasn't the voice of the audience in the first movie?
Yeah.
The intro point to the real world with these three crazy scientists. Like, he was.
Yeah, exactly.
So what's different? Is it really the movies different? And now the movies all have to be meta? It's like, no, the fans have evolved. You can't, there's always been a fan perspective to an extent, or, an audience perspective, but fans are smarter now and they've seen more, and they
expect more.
Yeah. And they expect more from it. They know more about their stuff. Like, we have so much more access now. So I think it's kind of silly to also complain about that as if, like, there's anything you could do, because if it's missing,
as if we don't have enough to complain about in real life.
But it's like, if that stuff is missing from the movie, you would feel the lack of it.
Yeah, as a fan, you would feel the lack of it. No one's mad at people in the Marvel universe for coming up and being like, oh my God, it's Tony Stark. No one cares about that. But in this movie, when it happens, oh my God, Ghostbusters? You are wretched. How dare you throw this in?
Yeah, I think you do need to have some of that meta commentary sometimes.
I was honestly surprised how little Paul Rudd was kind of played down in the movie. I expected him to have a much larger role.
Sure.
Like, not saying he wasn't in it, but you know what I mean.
Well, you kind of figure he's going to be a Ghostbuster at some point, and he really wasn't. He was the Louis Tully of the film.
Yeah, he was exactly what you expected he would be.
Yeah. But no, it's interesting because this, this was not told from the Ghostbusters perspective. It was told from an outside perspective, which, like you said, makes it much more accessible right off the bat. And it reminds me of like, so like I'm a Doctor Who fan as well. And there's 55, almost 60 years now of Doctor Who episodes. So when you're a fan of something like that and somebody says, where do I start? Or how do you introduce someone to something where there's so much of it like that? There's one episode that I always recommend to people, and it's called Blink. And it has the 10th Doctor, which is David Tennant. And he's barely in the episode because it's an outside character who's brought into this situation and starts experiencing the Doctor sort of from the outside and learning about him. And this was a very similar setup. Like the way that, like you said, this could introduce people who haven't seen the first movies, but it really allows you to tell the story from an outside perspective so the audience can be right there with you the whole time.
Yeah.
And then you have things like the memories of the first movie. When you see a ghost trap, there's so much in that movie that like
when she first pulls apart the pack,
it does stir the nostalgia. And yeah, to see the inside like of a proton pack.
Yeah, man, what was the weird like where she would like cock it and the little glass
clear
thing
tube
would come out? I don't remember that from the initial one.
You go back and watch when they say make them hard and they turn that and they pop out.
Okay,
it's a dick joke. It was a dick joke.
Oh, I'm not surprised by it. It's one of the things I picked up on. It's like I don't remember that necessarily from the first movie.
It's part of the construction of the proton pack. Venkman says, "Make them hard," and they turn it and they all pop out. It's the safety's off. It was a great movie. Do you have any final thoughts on Ghostbusters Afterlife?
Man, my only final thought would be to go see it and fuck the haters, because people are going to hate on everything. I thought it was a very good movie, very classy, well done, great storyline, great actual cinematic buildup. The practicals were amazing. It was a great mix of old and new. Practicals with graphics with a good set design, costumes. Like, I don't know. I personally thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'm not even like a big ghost head. Like I was a fan of the series growing up. I was a fan of the movies. I've always been a fan of the whole series. I watch the movies at least once a year, but like I wouldn't call myself the ultimate Ghostbusters fan like you. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. Like I said, whether you've seen them all before or you've never seen a single one, you can go see this movie individually and it will make you feel good.
Yeah,
that's really what it does. It makes you feel, by the end of the movie, you feel good.
It's very cathartic too. Yeah, there's a lot in there, and you tear up. But it
even made my wife cry.
And
she knows nothing about Ghostbusters. Like she's probably seen the first movies twice.
You don't need to know. I mean, you get everything you need to from the movie. Like you said, it's all sort of self-encapsulated.
I'm excited to see where it may go from here.
Yo, me too. Sure. Whether we get a series or we get more movies, there's hopefully
at least we know it's made its money back, so they can at least consider the idea of more.
Absolutely. For me, I mean, I remember being a little kid. And the scene in Ghostbusters 2 when the Titanic shows up with Cheech,
oh yeah,
you know? And the ghosts that getting off the Titanic. First of all, I knew as a kid that the big hole in the side of the ship, that's not how it worked. The thing cracked in half, so it didn't look right. The damage, I knew that was off. But the ghosts.
As a kid, I was already a scientist.
Oh yeah, but the ghosts walking off of it just really freaked me out. For some reason. I remember being a little kid and being in bed and, you know, that feeling when like you got the covers up and you're afraid to look at the door because I used to think those ghosts are going to be there staring at me, you know, when I look over. And so I used to keep my toy proton pack right next to my bed. And I remember at one point realizing like, okay, ghosts aren't real. But if ghosts are real, then my proton pack must also be real. So I have a way to fight them.
Good logic.
It's kid logic.
It's sound.
But Ghostbusters taught me at a very early age that there's not many problems that you can't solve with either science or sarcasm. And I have based my entire personality, to a great extent, off of Peter Venkman.
That's true.
It was what was there when, you know, my little nut cracked and I sprouted, and it's something I've lived with my whole life. I've wanting to be Venkman, wanting to be the guy who's always the coolest and the smartest in the room, but also isn't ever the smartest in the room.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter. He's not rich. He's not powerful, but when he steps into a room, he controls that room. And he's completely disrespectful of authority. And he's unabashedly, unashamedly himself. And he might be a little creepy sometimes. He'll let you know that he's interested
a little
right
creepy
away.
Sometimes.
But he's still a gentleman. Venkman will absolutely be the one to flirt nonstop and but he takes no for an answer and he leaves.
Well,
and he knows that, it's better to live to fight another day than it is to try to push it. And he ends up wearing people down that way. You can say that character is maybe problematic in certain respects, but also
especially in retrospect.
Yeah, maybe, but also
what
like
flawed from the past.
When Dana was throwing herself at him, he turned her down because he knew that wasn't her. He knew that wasn't the right thing to do.
Yeah.
So he still has a moral compass, even if he's annoyed by the fact that he has to follow his own moral compass. And that's something that I really identify with in my own life. But
either way, there you go, folks. Full of nostalgia, full of fun.
Yes.
If you haven't seen it before, you'll get some new nostalgia. I don't know what to tell you. Just go see the movie.
It. Go see it. Love it. If you want to like something, you can.
Yeah.
It's easy. Just like it. Just try. But it's really, there's a lot there to be found. And I think anybody who's a Ghostbusters fan, even, a tentative or a tertiary Ghostbusters fan, you're going to love this movie. It's going to give you what you want to see.
That's right. And on that note, music.